Hi, this is Siraj Khan, lecturer in English cast. Language Learning Theories, lecture number 7. In the previous lectures, we discussed about Jean Piaget's um, 4 models of language learning. How do children learn to speak? Behavioral theory assumes that children imitate what they hear. And thanks to continuous positive reinforcement, children learn language through conditioning and habit formation. A great many theories regarding language development in human beings have been proposed in the past and still being proposed. In language learning theories, behavioral or behavioristic theory, a nativist theory, which is behaviorist theory, which is presented by B.F. Skinner, and B.F. Skinner, who was an American psychologist, behaviorist, author, inventor, and social philosopher. He was the professor of psychology at Harvard University from 1958 until his retirement in 1974. Linguistics is the scientific study of the human language. Everyone knows that, and this is the definition we come across all the time whenever we study psycholinguistics, we study sociolinguistics, we study morphology, syntax, semantics. We come across with this definition, and it can be broadly broken into 3 categories of study: language of form, language of meaning, and language in context. One subfield of linguistics is the study of language structure or grammar. This focuses on the system of rules followed by the users of language. It includes the study of morphology, the formation and composition of words, syntax, the formation and composition of phrases and sentences from these words, phonology, the study of speech sounds in their cognitive aspects, phonetics, the study of speech sounds in their physical aspects and how they use produced and perceived, how they are produced and perceived. The study of language meaning is concerned with how language imply logical structures and real world references to convey process and assign meaning. Psycholinguistics deals with psychology and neurobiological factors that enable humans to acquire, use, and understand language, how these are being used. Psycholinguistics covers sentence out of vocabulary and covers the cognitive processes that make it possible to generate grammatical and meaningful sentences in our vocabulary and grammatical structures as well. How do children acquire language? That is the main focus. Language acquisition. How do people process and comprehend language? Language comprehension. How do people produce language? Language production. And how do adults acquire learning a new language? Second language acquisition learning. What is language acquisition? Language acquisition is the process by which humans acquire the capacity to perceive, produce, and use words to understand. Perceiving, production, and understanding and communication. It involves the picking up of diverse capacities, including syntax, phonetics, and an extensive vocabulary. However, learning a first language is something that every normal child does successfully without much need for formal lessons. Language development is a complex and unique human quality, but yet children seem to acquire language at a very rapid rate rate, with most children's speech being relatively grammatical by age 3. Martin and Crane suggest grammar, which is a set of mental rules that characterizes all the sentences of language, must be mastered in order to a language. Most children in a linguistic community seem to succeed in converging on a grammatical system equivalent to everyone else in the community with few wrong turns, which is quite remarkable considering the complexity of the system. Learning stages usually consist of cooing 6 months. At the age of 6 months, we use phonemes from every language. Babbling 9 months selectively use phonemes from their native language. One word utterances are one word stage. 12 months start using single words. Telegraphic speech 2 years at the age of 2 means 24 months old. Multi-word utterances that lack in function. Normal speech 5 years, almost normal developed speech. Learning is one of the most important activities in which humans engage it. It is at the very core of the educational process, although like these are the stages from which a kid passes through. Like at the age of 6, starting phonemes, the sounds ma, ba, ta, da, single words. Babbling 9 months selectively use phonemes from their native language, like baba, dada. 12 months start using single words, then baba and tata and kaka. Like that, use multi-word utterances that lack in function, like baba, za. In Pashto is like we are having examples of the kids speaking. General theories based on scientific evidence are considered more valid than theories based on opinion or personal. Spend any time around a baby who is acquiring spoken language, and you soon realize how truly amazing the acquisition of language is. There are many schools of thought that try to explain how children acquire or learn the language, and there is still like when we spend time with kids, we come across with such uh, experiences. The first theory regarding language learning, which is called the behaviorist theory, or the behaviorist view of language learning, which is Boris Frederick Skinner theory, which is known as B.F. Skinner, who was an American psychologist, behaviorist, author, inventor, and uh, philosopher, social philosopher. Behaviorist theory is the belief that children develop language based on parents rewarding proper use of language and discouraging improper use. Like the process of language learning, according to behaviorist, can be explained in terms of conditioning. The child begins to hear during the first year of his life a large number of speech sounds produced by his parents. Gradually, he learns to associate these sounds with the situations which accompany them. For instance, the child learns to recognize the sound of endearment which his mother produces when she feeds him. After some time, these sounds become pleasurable in themselves, even when they are not accompanied by food. At this stage, conditioning to language has begun. The more frequently the child is exposed to this process of conditioning, the stronger its effect, which the child obtains from the conditioning process. Before long, the child begins to imitate some of speech sounds that he has heard. The child does so in an attempt to control the environment and to invite the attention of his mother. Like, give me a dozen healthy infants, well formed, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train them or him to become any type of specialist. might select doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chef, and yes, even beggar, man, and thief, regardless of his talents, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors. John Watson claims that the mother may fail to respond to the majority of these random signals, but if the child by chance produces the vocal stimulus which the mother recognizes as the appropriate, she responds. Like the theory is basically that learning is based on behavior. Infants learn oral language from other human role models through a process involving imitation, rewards, and practices. We learn language through imitation, we learn language through we get rewards, we get encouragement, we get punished, we get discouragement. So, from our environment, from imitation, from punishment, we learn language. This is what Skinner tries to tell us. The cognitive view of language learning, Jean Piaget, is concerned with the development of a person's thought process, and it also looks at how these thought processes influence how we understand and interact with the world. The foremost cognitive thinker was Jean Piaget, who was a psychologist from Switzerland who proposed an idea that seems in 1936 about child development. Children think differently than adults. Piaget then proposed a theory of cognitive development, which is already discussed in the previous classes. Cognitive theory is a learning theory of psychology that attempts to explain human behavior by understanding the thought process. Like here, language, the four stages of cognitive development. Jean Piaget's theory, which is sensory motor, pre operational stage, concrete operational stage, formal operational stage. We recognize as object, self is agent of action and begins to act intentionally. For example, pulls a string to set mobile in motion, or shakes a rattle to make it pulls a string to set mobile in motion, like Dhaka Dena Gadi Ko. At the age of 2, then pre-operational 2 to 7 years learn to use language and to represent objects by images and words. Concrete operational at the age of 7-11 years can think logically. Logic starts here, and formal operational stage 11 years and up can think logically about independently, rationally abstract propositions and test hypotheses systematically. And then the nativist theory, which is presented by Noam Chomsky, is perhaps the best known and the most influential linguist of the second half of the 20th century. He has made a number of strong claims about language. Particularly, he suggests that language is an innate faculty, that is to say, that we are born with a set of rules about language in our heads, which he refers to as the universal grammar. That we have not been given clean slate. Children are exposed to very little correctly formed language. When people speak, constantly interrupt themselves, change their minds, make slips of the tongue, and so on, yet children manage to learn their language all the same. Children do not simply copy the language that they hear around them. Like it is totally opposite B.F. Skinner's theory of behaviorism. Innate theory of mentalism or innate capacities of the children is not just imitating or following others. Some language learning tools provided at birth is referred to by Chomsky as the language acquisition device or universal grammar. The idea of a language organ in our brains that lets us learn language very quickly, particularly during the first 2-3 years of life. Nativists argue that without such a biological predisposition, it would be impossible to learn language as quickly and as thoroughly as we do. Social interactionist theory, which is given by Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky social interaction theory incorporates nurture arguments in that children can be influenced by their environment as well as the language input children receive from their caregivers. It is based on interaction communication. The more we interact, the more we learn. Although the theories of Skinner, Chomsky, and Piaget are all very different and very important in their own context, they don't necessarily take into account the fact that children don't encounter language in isolation. That is the main point. Cognitive development of children and adolescents is enhanced when they work in their zone of proximal development, ZPD for short. To each, the ZPD children need the help of adults or more competent individuals to support or scaffold them as they are learning new things. Thank you and good luck.